Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. So today I brought a friend along with me. We're going to do a video kind of discussing some of the questions that we've gotten and just talking about a little bit of LGBT stuff that we've kind of experienced growing up here in Virginia. So I guess we're gonna start off by introducing you and then...
Hey guys, I'm Ezra. I am a 28-year-old transgender guy. I transitioned from female to male a little bit over 4 years ago, and I do identify as mostly gay. I am actually pansexual, and we may kind of talk about some of the acronyms, but I do identify mostly as gay, and I think that a lot of my experience is kind of informed by growing up as somebody who was socially seen as a female, grew up that way, and then transitioning a little bit later in life as an adult, and kind of some of my adventures that way and journeys that way.
So I most definitely, as you guys know, identify as gay. I came out when I was 19, so I literally just hit my 10-year mark last year. Woo! So I've been out for a while. So when it comes to like questions and stuff, I feel like I just kind of put myself out there for the world, just because I know that there's a lot of people who are younger that are not ready for these types of questions. So I've always kind of put myself out there for people who just have questions that may be kind of out there or maybe just on the back of your mind that you want to ask, but you're afraid to ask, and you shouldn't ask. Gays who have just come out who really don't know the answers themselves because they're in the process of learning who they are, because I feel like we do still live in a world where it's not accepted. So it's not something that at a young age you can really grow up and understand until kind of you get your own space and freedom away from like family. I definitely think there's families out there now, because I've met some parents who have like very young children and they're very open to it, but I still think there's a lot of people in this area that are still very closed-minded on LGBT stuff. So I kind of just make videos and hope that the right audience finds it. And I wanted to bring Ezra in because he's got a completely different perspective than my own, and I think it's important for the entire LGBT community to be represented on every platform, and I want everyone to feel like it's a good place to kind of just tell their story. So I figured we would start with the question of, when did you know? So for me, it was like, I kind of knew at a very young age. It wasn't like a sexual thing. It was more just like I was more fascinated with like the male body than the girl body. Like in elementary school, all the guys were like talking about like girls, and it just didn't interest me. Like I don't know if like it was because I was brought up by like respecting women, and like I'd always hear like my mom, my grandmother tell me how like men would disrespect women. So when I was little, I was like, oh, I have to be respectful of women. So I kind of went with that, and I was just like, I'm not going to talk about women that way, but I definitely had a fascination with like the male body, and it wasn't like a sexual thing at first. That was something I kind of grew up into, but it was different. So
Kind of jumping off what you're saying here, Drummond. I really didn't know, and it took me a very long time to figure out, was I interested in the male body, masculinity, because I wanted to be them, or because I wanted to be intimate with them? And as it turns out, I guess it was both, but it was a very long time where that was really, really confusing, of like, why am I admiring this person, or why does this person fascinate me? Like, I just didn't know what I was feeling there. And one thing that's different from growing up as a cisgendered male, meaning somebody who identifies with their own gender identity being analogous to the gender that they were assigned at birth. Obviously, a trans person is not going to have that same congruence there. So growing up, it was really, really confusing of like, what am I even feeling? I did not have any kind of role models that way. That's one thing I think has gotten a lot better over the ensuing years from like when either of us came out, is just being able to have role models, have media out there, have people to ask. I know you mentioned people still being closed-minded, especially like rural people and, conservative and religious, and some of those things that do not lend themselves to like open-mindedness. But I actually think a lot of people have a lot of very respectful questions and are simply curious. they may not know who to ask, and they may not know exactly how to ask it.
Yeah. I think a lot of times parents will ask their children that are just coming out to them, and I think at that point, like even thinking about like when I first came out, like I didn't know anything along the lines of half the answers that I know now, but I just sat there and I was just like, I felt more attacked, even if they were asking out of like curiosity. Like I think at that point in my life, like anything that, like if you didn't just accept me for who I was, like I felt attacked.
Absolutely.
And it's just because I wasn't like educated on it, and so to answer those questions, I didn't know the answers to them. So like for them to like ask them, I just felt very attacked every single time.
I didn't have the vocabulary to even answer most of these questions throughout much of my life.
Yeah, and I felt like they were always just asking like, how do you know? How, like, you haven't had sex with a girl, so how do you know you're gay? And I'm like, I'm just literally sexually attracted to males. Like, that's how I know.
Yeah.
But like people are like, oh, well, you just haven't found the right girl, or you haven't slept with a girl yet, so you don't know. I've even had like a boss like point that out, which is extremely awkward. But it's just like, you just kind of know. Like, I most definitely don't know like if you were born this way or brought up that way. Like, that's not scientifically proven yet, but I definitely feel like it's not something that you can change. It's not something that you can send someone away to a camp. It's just like something you really have to learn how to like figure out and accept. I feel like gay role models have kind of expanded and they've gotten a lot more light for sure. Like, I thought it was amazing when like the Love, Simon movie finally came out, and I know a lot of people had issues with the fact that it was just like a white gay male. Like, they generally get the most attention for sure when it comes to anything LGBT, and it's awesome that that movie came out, because for me, that's like, I can identify as that. And granted, that movie was very like cushioned, because I don't think a lot of gay people's experiences were that great. But I think in general, it would be harder for people who are identifying as all the other people in the LGBT, because the role models just really haven't been out there.
Yeah, we really don't have narratives for a lot of diversity that way. You know, as Drummond said, we get a lot of the white, cisgendered, straight passing, if I can use that term, gay guys are out there. Or on the flip side, we see a lot of people who are like super flamboyant, like super visibly gay culture, which is great. I'm glad those people are out there. But I just don't think there's as many role models for people who exist kind of in the gray areas, whether it's gray areas of being genderqueer, agender, or people who exist more along the sexuality spectrum of being bisexual, pansexual. I don't think there's quite as many examples of that. And actually, something you were saying earlier was making me think of like sexual fluidity throughout life. Because, you know, I've been with a lot of different people. I have a lot of different experiences, and that actually has informed my preferences. But a lot of people's interests fluctuate throughout lives. You know, you can be into different things at different times, and that in no way invalidates one identity versus another. You know, it's valid for you now, and that's enough. You know, this is true for me in the here and now. I can't really promise where I'm going to be in a year or 5 years or 10 years, but that in no way invalidates like this truth.
Yeah, I feel like too often we try to put labels on things, and like, I liked the idea of like LGBT and then like all the rest, and like the rainbow idea, just because we were kind of like a community. Like, we were just like a group of people that just didn't really identify with like the heterosexuals of the world. And I feel like through time, like now we're starting to realize that everyone's got different means of like needs and everything in the community. So we've kind of divided ourselves more and more and more and more. And I'm constantly learning. And even as someone who like goes out there and goes to like LGBT stuff and educates people on what like being gay is, I am still also learning about everyone else in our community and how they identify. Like, I just met a girl who considers herself like non-binary, and the nice thing is when I meet people who understand that I am just trying to understand who they are and what their like identity is, I'm not asking because I want to like make fun of them or find differences so that I can like push them out. Like, I want to understand people, and it's kind of awesome to have people who identify as other people and are able to talk about it without like getting easily offended by things.
And, Drummond and I, we're both very, very open about these things. I think we're pretty solid in our own identities. We're pretty comfortable with our own identities. And we're in a place where it's okay to ask those questions. And I mean, I've answered a lot of questions that really nobody should be asking me, but I'm still okay with answering them because, I don't care. I'm cool with that. But there are questions that you shouldn't ask, literally anyone else in your life. I think that's where people who put themselves out there publicly as resources, whether it's online or in any other space, those are people to talk to so that you don't have to query your friends or your kids or your loved ones. Yeah, your coworkers. Or people in the grocery store. You shouldn't be asking them the questions that you might ask a more public figure.
Yeah. I mean, when it comes to questions that people have asked, there's definitely some times where I'm just oh wow, this is not the right setting for this type of question. I know I put myself out there, but not the right setting. But I definitely prefer someone to ask a question of me than to assume, or for them to just say hateful things instead of just getting my opinion on something. Because I mean, my story is not everyone's story. So when people ask questions, the one thing I like to point out, because I've had people ask me, most recently a coworker asked me if what sexual position gays take, and do we alternate positions, or do we does one perform the specific moves on the other? And I was just
specific.
Yeah, he was, and this is in a group chat where other people are reading it. He's yeah, my wife and I were just kind of wondering this, and I'm going to ask you. And I was just okay, well, for me, because this is just my story, I can identify and say that it's not a specific position. But there are people out there who will identify as a top and will identify as a bottom. There's some that will do everything. And it's the questions, you have to realize that we're just like the rest of the humans out there. None of us are the same. You can't say all gays. I will never answer a question and be yes, all of us gays do this.
And I can't answer for all trans people. I'm completely unqualified to answer for anyone except myself.
Exactly. So, I mean, the questions and stuff that we talk about in this video will just be from our perspectives as gay people, because we've all lived different lives. And that's what I love about the gay community, is we all have so many different stories. And I've gotten to share so many different stories with people who've come out, because I've done counseling and stuff like that all through college. And I just watch so many people blossom into the people that they are now. So when it comes to your process, I know for me, coming out at 19 was rough, but when it came to there wasn't any changes for me physically. So for me, I just came out, and it was just a huge weight lifted off of my shoulder. I feel for you it would be a little bit more process and steps to that.
For me, there was no big seminal moment of coming out. I actually think my life is more a series of coming outs, whether it's coming out as different things or to different people. When I first started transitioning, or first thought that I was going to transition, there were definitely a select number of people who I told. And that was one form of coming out. Another form of coming out, as physical changes started happening, and I became visibly something. Nobody was quite sure what. But I didn't quite look like a guy yet, but something was happening. And, then I was basically coming out to everyone who interacted with me and everyone who'd seen me literally changing in front of their eyes. Sitting here now, I am coming out in a different way because I am not visibly transgender. So I have those conversations, whether it's with lovers, partners, friends, strangers, who have those kind of questions about me, and who I have to come out to and explain, okay, well, this is a part of my history. For me, it's not that big a deal. I'm in a good place that way, but it is part of history. And I think that history informs who we are, and also, our perspective on how we interact with other people.
Yeah, I can definitely say that for me, and I've done videos talking about this before, but when it comes to coming out, it's never really a one-time thing. I feel it's every single person I meet.
Yeah.
because I'm not extremely flamboyant, a lot of people don't catch on to it right away. And I kind of gotten to the point where, like, when it comes to job interviews, I just kind of say it now.
Yeah.
Because I never want to work somewhere where it's not okay to be gay.
Absolutely.
But it's just like a constant thing where I feel like every new group of people, and I don't really like my friends to introduce me as like, hey, this is my gay friend. I like to just be introduced as a person. And then I want to tell people, hey, I'm gay.
And you choose the narrative, you frame the narrative for yourself.
Yeah, because, I mean, there's going to be people that I think need to get to know me as a person first and then find out that I'm gay so that they can see that I'm just like everyone else. I don't like when people automatically find out that I'm gay right from the beginning and then it's like the hearing is done. Nothing else.
That's all they can pay attention to.
The title is gay and that's all I get to wear. And so for me, I feel like I've come out multiple times, and coming back to Virginia, I feel like I've come out more here than before when I lived in bigger cities. It was just kind of like everyone blended with each other. So when I came back here, it's just like, okay, before you say anything more offensive, I'm also gay. Hi, how are you? So
watch yourself.
I definitely think that for any gay person, no matter what like letter you are, like the coming out process is going to be a forever thing. Until we live in a world where it's not, and that would be beautiful. But you definitely have to become very comfortable with the whole coming out process and how you want to deal it with people. Because as much as I like post it all over my social media and I literally wear stuff that say it, I still like get people that are very confused when I tell them that I am. I've had girls like hit on me and I'm just like, huh, I'm gay. Sorry.
Nice try.
Thanks for the number. I'll give it to some other guy that might be interested. Definitely not interested in that. We can be friends, but that's about it. But yeah, I feel like for you, like one thing I talked about with one of my other friends, because I was saying how when I moved back to Virginia, I heard a lot of really hateful things about the gay community. Like people would sit down with me and just say really hateful things because they see like my Christian tattoo here, my cross, and they're just like a Christian. And they're like, let's bash the gays. And then my friend, he was extremely flamboyant and like you could tell he was gay as soon as he walked in the room. And he had a lot more a positive experience of the whole thing. Like he was just like, it's great. Like everyone loves me. And I'm like, they talk about you behind your back. Like there's a difference. Like they talk to me to my face because they don't know. I have to like physically introduce myself as gay so for some people to realize that I am. And I feel like when you were saying that, like now people wouldn't know, like talking to you, do you feel like you've ever come across people who are a little bit more closed-minded and think they're talking to someone?
Absolutely. Yeah, I definitely hear things that people would not say to me or about me if they knew more about me or just knew that I was, there listening. And I always think about that in terms of folks who are maybe early coming out and they're hearing like all these hateful messages. They're hearing it from people who they think they could trust. And I can understand how hard that is to think about coming out to those kind of people because you're like, wow, if they're saying this about me, even if it's not directed at you, like that's a real barrier to being like open and honest. I mean, like I was saying earlier, I'm at the point where I kind of like don't care. It doesn't really get through to me any kind of negative way. But I just think about people who are early in transition, and I think about where I was early in transition. I got asked a lot of questions and had a lot of things said to me early on. Like I was saying, when I'm in a very genderqueer area or like early in my transition, looked really androgynous. I totally got asked questions like, what are you basically? And it was really, really uncomfortable because I didn't have a good answer. I was still figuring out what I was, to be honest. And it certainly was not a conversation I wanted to have with, just anyone.
Yeah.
You don't ask those things.
Yeah, I feel like those types of questions get really uncomfortable even with people you care about because you still feel like that sense of judgment.
It's like an implicit attack. You're like having to justify, but I'm really whatever.
Yeah. So you talked about wanting to kind of talk about like people saying, wouldn't it just be easier to be a girl? So like, what did you want to say? Because I feel like that's definitely like, normally I show people like the gingerbread thing where it's just like, so this, like they identify as this and they like this. And I just like try to put it out there because I give speeches and stuff at churches to kind of like open the like door for people to communicate with someone who's gay, because I think it's important. But I've gotten questions of like, when are you going to have the surgery? And I'm just like, okay, so
where do we even start?
there's a difference. And like, I identify as a male and I'm gay, so I'm sexually attracted to the male body. And I feel like for like transgender people, it's like tacking on even more stuff to explain than what I even have to. And even myself, like, I've asked questions and I've offended people who weren't ready to answer the questions. And I asked it in a way where I was just trying to be completely understanding because I wanted to say the right things. And I wanted to be there to defend them if someone else said the wrong thing. And you just have to be really careful. And so when you said you wanted to talk about that, I was like, this is good.
Okay.
I want to know.
Okay, so one of the most common questions that I've gotten from both straight cisgendered people as well as other gay community people is, wouldn't it have been easier for you to just stay as a girl? And there's like so much wrong with that question that I don't even know where to answer it. But here's the basics. So like Drummond was saying, gender identity is how you identify yourself. I would say gender identity lives up in your head. It's who we are. Sexual orientation is who you want to do and what you want to do with them. Those really exist in separate spheres. Obviously, there is an overlap. You know, we can be multiple things at once. You know, I can be a trans guy and also gay. But they're totally separate, like, issues to begin with. So people who ask, like, wouldn't it have been easier for me to not have transitioned? What they're really asking is, like, wouldn't it have been easier for you to get guys if you were a girl? The reality is it isn't any easier. I'm doing fine. But it really wouldn't have been easier because it wouldn't have been me. I would have been miserable. And I can say honestly that, like, before I transitioned, I was so uncomfortable with myself. It's uncomfortable being seen as female, presenting as female. I was certainly uncomfortable being intimate, you know, in a female role. It wasn't me. So, like, numbers game, statistics, it might have been easier or more convenient. But life isn't about doing what's easy or doing what's convenient. It's about doing what's authentic. And there was literally no way that I could be my authentic self without transitioning. So that's one of those questions that I know it's kind of well-meaning, but it is coming from a place of being very ill-informed about the difference of like gender and sexuality identities. And it's also coming from that place of not understanding that trans people, myself included, nobody transitions because they think it's going to be easy. That doesn't even fit into the equation. We transition because it is an absolute imperative to live our lives, to be authentic, and hopefully to be happy, which really is what, you know, everyone should be trying to do. Exactly. It's not about what's convenient.
Yeah, I feel like that's the same for like people who come out as gay. Like, we don't do it because we're like, oh, this is going to be so much fun.
Yeah.
We're going to see if all of our friends and family just abandon us, and yay, they didn't.
Good times.
Yeah, I feel like people assume that there's easy ways around it, but like, it's really just who you are. And like you said, being authentic. Like, when I came out, like, the world was lifted off of my shoulders. It was just like all the lies I had to tell to keep my secret. Like, there were so many things like that I did and got caught in. And like when I was little, we were talking earlier about this. I thought it was perfectly normal to play with like Barbie dolls. Like, my mom didn't say anything about it. I grew up with two sisters. So like, for me, like, I was normal. Like, nothing was wrong with that. And then one day, like, I put my Barbies in my book bag and brought them to school. And that's when I first, like, got slapped in the face with you're different. Like, you are not like the rest of us. And I got made fun of probably all the way through elementary school. Like, it was something that stuck with me forever. And I still remember just, like, being embarrassed by it. And it's like, it's not something to be embarrassed about. Like, I've talked to so many gay people and they're like, I did the same thing. So it's not like something, it's not defining. I know some straight guys that have played with dolls and turned out straight. Like, it's not, a doll isn't going to turn your child gay, I promise. If
They're
wanna
gay already.
Exactly. I really believe that no matter what you do as a parent, like, the only thing that's different between you being like a open-minded parent and a closed-minded parent is how comfortable your kid is when they come out to you. As like, no matter what type of parent you are, it's not going to change the fact that your child's gay or straight.
And you didn't do anything wrong either.
Exactly.
It's nothing to be ashamed of.
The wrong thing is when you kick them out of the house or disown them or you're horrible to them or start treating them differently because you didn't bring them up that way. Like, that is completely unacceptable. Like, it's your child. Like, that is horrible. I could never think of doing that to another human being. Like, just disowning them, not talking to them because of something that they are. Like, I've seen so many, because I've helped people come out, I've watched families just like distance themselves or cut someone out. And it's sad to see, because it's like all they want is like that connection back with their family that they had. And like, it's sad to see gay people go through the thought process of, maybe I shouldn't have come out. Like, that's really sad to see, because for me, I came out, and yes, I had a lot of like issues with like the churches that I went to. Like, granted, a lot of my friends said really nice things to my face. I had a lot of people that said things behind my back, which hurt later. But my transition into being gay was very accepting for the most part. So for me, like, it helped me. Like, the weight like got lifted off, and I just felt amazing afterwards. But there are people out there that come out and it gets a lot worse, and I think that's kind of sad.
Now, I think we have a lot of narratives for people at both extremes. We have the narratives of people who've just had, a great and easy time of it, and everyone's been super accepting. And then conversely, we have the narratives of people who end up, homeless or dead. We have really those two extremes. But I think there's really a lot of people who are in the middle. And those are people who are either not visibly gay or visibly trans, whatever, or they're the people who are just kind of muddling along in life.
Yeah, I definitely think that I feel like there needs to be a lot more people in the LGBT community that kind of raise their voice, that they are part of the LGBT community and not necessarily running around at the parade. Like, they don't need to be at Pride screaming that they're gay, but they also need to be a little bit more vocal. I think it's important that lawyers, doctors, someone at the grocery store, anything, like just the normal jobs that people have, so that kids at a younger age don't feel like there's like a stereotype they have to meet or standards for the gay community. I know when I helped one of my friends in college come out, I took him to the gay club because I was like, oh my gosh, I love going there. I just can like dance and feel free. And he was a little bit like pudgier, and he wasn't like the ideal like attractive person. And I took him, and someone told him that he needed to go back into the closet because he wouldn't fit into the gay community. And I was just like,
there's room for everyone.
Yeah, it was rough, because like I took him there because I was excited because I had such a positive experience there, and he got shut out so quickly because I feel like the LGBT community can be very judgmental. It's kind of sad to see that, because like, what it feels like to be judged by people and told that you're not accepted. So for us to do that to someone who's trying to find acceptance, it's kind of sad. So I'm definitely the type of person that I try to open myself up to everyone, no matter how old they are, no matter what they look like. I think it's important that they feel like there's a part of them that they can like love and just go out there and be who they want to be.
Going off what Drummond was saying also earlier, we don't have as many examples of people, especially in the transgender community, who are done transitioning. I consider myself post-transition in that I'm just living my life. I consider myself like any other dude at this point. But what we mostly see, whether it's in pop culture or on social media, is people who are early in those phases, who are still struggling with their identity, and who maybe are still visibly dealing with that identity. And I would love to see a lot more faces of people who are, the doctors, the lawyers, just regular folk, successful folk even, who, oh, by the way, are also gay or also trans, And it's not like this big glaring thing about them. It's just part of who they are, and they're out there showing that, life is good and life is normal.
Exactly. I think too often we grab the title of like anything in the LGBT, and that's like what we hold on to. Like we can't do anything else. All we can be is I'm just a gay person. And I feel like if you focus so hard around that, like there's not much you can build off of that. Like what are you going to become? Like, yes, it's important to have the gay activists out there. I mean, I consider myself an LGBT content creator for YouTube. So I definitely hold on to the fact that I am gay, but I am definitely going out there and doing other things with my life. And I think it's important for people to see that like there are no limits to what you can become just because you're gay. Like you might have some issues with people who don't accept you, but there's a big world out there that is fully accepting of who you are. And if one place blocks you and stops you from doing what you like know you're made for, like there's another door that you can open and get into that position if that's what you want to do.
Let me ask you this. Has your activism changed as you've become more comfortable with yourself, or will your activism change?
I definitely feel like before I kind of just did it without really knowing that I was being an activist. I was just kind of sharing my story because I came from a part where I was just like, if this can help anybody, like I want it to help someone. And I didn't really have a voice. I was just kind of a shy kid that was just like, here's my story. And when I started getting more and more feedback of, wow, your story has really helped me. Wow, this is real. Like it started to like make me realize that my voice kind of stood for something. So I've definitely become a lot more aggressive. And I definitely am a lot more vocal in public, whereas before it was just kind of like, oh my gosh, just hide my face. Like, I don't want anybody to know that I'm gay. I'm not going to step up. But like now I'm most definitely like, if someone makes a statement that's ignorant, I will be like, that's ignorant. Fix yourself.
And I think that comes with confidence, being more confident with oneself, being more confident with identity, and with even having a voice and being confident in being able to use that voice. And I personally associate that more with people who are further along in life. Age and maturity are not linearly correlated, but I do see people, we know, but I do see people who are a little bit further along in their life who just, they're okay with whatever it is. They're not going to be offended by somebody using the wrong word or the wrong pronoun accidentally, or asking a question that's a little bit offensive or a little bit ignorant or a little bit idiotic. And instead, those people, I think, are okay with just kind of answering stuff or being open, but it's not their master status anymore. Like, it's not the first thing that you introduce yourself as. And I see that for people who are not necessarily activists, but just going through their own life process.
Yeah. I mean, when you think about it, like, in general, like, growing up, trying to find your identity even as a straight teenager.
It's
like,
complicated.
It's hard. Like, teenagers struggle in general, like, their own, like, sexual, like, everything's changing. So, like, for them, it's a struggle too. So I think a lot of people can relate at that age group. It would be important for the LGBT to kind of be represented there and not thought of as, like, wrong. Because I feel like at that point, like, everyone's kind of curious and everyone's, like, learning new things about themselves. And I think in general, like, the whole, like, maturity and knowing who you are does come later on in life. Like, I definitely feel like when I was younger, I was a little bit more offended by things that people would say. And I wasted a lot of time being hurt by things that people said out of either being uneducated or ill-informed, or because, like, there's people that will say hateful things to you no matter what.
Yeah.
I'm on YouTube.
It's part of life.
I get it all the time. But it's when you're older, you start to care a little bit less about that, and you kind of focus on, like, where is that coming from?
Yeah, where's somebody hurt coming from when they ask a question? Like, that's what I meant, where people ask ignorant questions that don't mean any harm, and I'm okay answering those. But when somebody asks something just to be hateful because they know that it's offensive, that's a whole different category. And I don't think anybody is under any obligation to open themselves up to those kind of questions. But if somebody's coming at you who isn't quite sure how to phrase things or is a little bit awkward in how they say it, personally, I would try to answer those. You know, like the quintessential question that a lot of transgender people get and that we are so tired of getting is, what's in our pants? And you know what? There is exactly one person anytime who needs to know that, and that's the person who you're being sexually intimate with. Or I guess it could be more than one, but the peoples with whom you are being intimate in that moment are the only people who need to know that. But for some reason, some people, especially cisgendered heterosexual people, think that that's a totally cool question to ask. And actually, I get that question now more from other gay people, and I'm like, y'all should know better. One, it doesn't matter unless we're going to be intimate, and if you start with that question, it's probably not going to happen.
Yeah.
Like, that's not a good opening line if you want to get in my pants. And really, it doesn't matter. You know, we make this assumption of everybody around us that we know what their bodies are. I see Drummond, I think I know what his body looks like.
No.
I don't really know. It doesn't really matter.
Yeah, I mean, in general, I think, like, the unknown makes people feel like they can just ask whatever.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's none of your business. I definitely feel like when you put yourself out on YouTube, I mean, people ask questions that I still have not answered because it's none of their business. And I've talked about, like, parts of my life that I keep private for a specific reason. I don't share everything on the internet, and I'm not obligated to just because I have a YouTube channel.
It's not all or nothing.
Sometimes you can still keep things private. Like, I've kind of learned that relationships are a little bit more private for me. I don't want to share everything on the internet. So for me, because I've learned what it's like when you break up with someone and everyone wants to know your business. So I've decided that I'm keeping that private for now. But when it comes to, like, sexual stuff, like, not everyone's going to be on the same level of what they're okay talking about. And it's kind of like, you have to feel that out.
Not literally.
Just feel it out, you know. But you have to, like, know the person that you're talking to. And it's definitely not something you just walk up to a complete stranger who's, oh, look, they're gay. Let's just ask what their sexual position is. That's okay. So I feel like for you, I feel like in general, the trans community is not well represented out there. Their stories have definitely not been told to the extent that gay people's stories have been told. Like, there's so many, like, YouTube videos out there. There's so many jokes and so many things that kind of just put our lives out there. So the questions, I feel like, have kind of died down from when I was younger, like when people didn't understand the gay term yet.
Now you're older and wiser.
Now everyone knows and they don't ask those questions as much.
Except your coworker.
except for him. But yeah, like, when I've gone to churches, like, people do ask questions that I truly, like, I honestly try not to think of them asking it as being rude. Even if they are, I'm going to be like, okay, they're asking because they want to know. So I just try to answer as accurately as I can, and then for other people in the community, I can't answer for because I don't live their lives and I don't know. I can be like, so my friend is, and this is what he said, but that's about as far as I can go. Like, I'm not even going to try to guess anything past what I've actually physically heard someone say, because anything past that, like, you're representing a group that you can't, like, identify as. Like, I can't even answer any questions other than, like, me being gay, I'm sexually attracted to males. Like, I can answer anything you want about me. But when you start asking me about, like, other gay people, like, I've had people ask me if I think their children are gay, and I'm like,
how do I know?
I don't know. Like, did you ask your kid? Like, this is not something, like, we don't have, like, this gaydar, even though, like, we talk about having a gaydar. Like, there's people in my life that I've known forever and I didn't know. Like, I've got friends that just come out to me and I didn't know. So it's really, like, you have to ask questions to the person that you're talking to and ask it about them, not the entire community, because we'll never be able to answer those.
Yeah, like I said, I speak for myself and I speak for my body and my experiences. And I would much rather that people ask me the awkward questions, including what's in your pants, because there's a very good chance that I will answer it because I just don't care. I'll tell anyone anything. But I would much rather that I'm the one who gets asked those questions than somebody who is less public,
Yeah.
more insecure, younger.
People who don't know the answers yet.
Right, absolutely. Because I at least have a flippant reply to every question, and it's not going to ruin my day.
Yeah. I feel like in general, like growing up, we were taught the straight way. Our children's books tell us the mommy and daddy, like everything's based around like straight. So like as a gay person, you have to figure that out pretty much on your own. It's not like we are gay and we go to a gay church and we learn about the gay. And it's not like we go to school and we learn about the gays. Like everything's kind of self-taught until we get to a point where we do find our community who helps us kind of understand ourselves. So I feel like with the gay community, all of our stories are so different in so many extreme ways because right from the beginning, we are all starting on a different level. Like I grew up as a Christian in a Christian household. So like my path is very oriented around religion and going from there, which is very different from people who didn't grow up with religious families and go a completely different direction. And I mean, even within the religious people in the LGBT community, our paths go a different way. Because for me, I don't believe in the Bible. And that's like blasphemy. Like, people don't agree with that, but I don't. And I still consider myself a Christian. So all of our stories are so different. It's not like we have storybooks as children that kind of guide us in a direction. And I guess in a sense, that's good. And also bad. Like, I feel like in the world we live in, like children's books are like, oh, so you're going to be a child, you're going to grow up, you're going to meet the love of your life, you're getting married, you're having kids. And it's just like, they're telling them what to do. For us, it's like...
And they're also told, if you start out as a little girl, you're going to grow up into be a
Princess.
big girl. And sometimes there's a surprise along the way. But like Drummond was telling earlier about like playing with Barbies and some early, I guess, signs, at least with the benefit of hindsight, I definitely had some moments there where with hindsight, I can be like, oh boy, that was a sign. But at the time, I was just being me, and I did not have any clue that there was an option to even transition. I think the world's gotten a lot better now than 20 years ago, but I did not even know that it was a thing. I did not know it was an option. So as I get older, as I hit puberty, I was just getting more and more distressed. You know, life was really, really hard feeling trapped in the wrong body. I mean, that's just a feeling I wouldn't wish on anyone. But I did not even have the language to explain it to myself, let alone to somebody else. So if somebody, when I was, say, 15 or 20 or even early 20s, had asked me a question like, do you want to be a boy? I did not even know that that was an option. Nobody asked me, and I couldn't have answered it.
Yeah. I mean, just thinking about growing up and like the thought process of what we see now. Like if you look at, like I had a conversation with a customer one day and she was talking about how you can't even put on a TV channel anymore and feel safe because your kids, you never know what they're going to end up watching. She's like, yeah, they might end up watching like RuPaul. And I'm just like...
The horror.
Dear Lord. But I'm just like sitting there like, that was definitely not an option. There was definitely like some stuff I'm sure like Will and Grace was kind of like the same era of when I was like younger. So like that came out and they were gay. Did I understand that? No. I just thought that he was a very like loud, sassy person. I didn't know what gay meant. Like it went way over my head. Lots of things went way over my head. But I love the fact now that there's like gay Olympians. There's
trans Olympians.
Like you can't even like go anywhere now where we're not represented, which is I think awesome because I do think like as a child, like even like what you were talking about, like not knowing that's even a thing. Like think about growing up as a kid and like feeling so wrong and not knowing that there's other people out there that have felt that exact same way. Because I feel like the gay community is a very lonely community at the beginning of anyone's story. Like, most of our stories are like, we're alone. We feel alone. We feel like we're the only person who's experiencing it, and the rest of the world is operating perfectly fine, and we're just different.
Yeah, you feel like you're the only person who has ever felt these things.
Definitely for the transgender community, I would say it would be nice to see a lot more of it. And I think that's a really amazing thing about like YouTube and other social medias is parents really can't block it out anymore. It's kind of something that's out there, and like even my nephew who's 2 years old, like he's watching YouTube video about cars, and then like a gay YouTuber pops up, and he's 2, doesn't understand it, but they're like cutting open toys and like having fun, and Hayden's loving it. And I think that's amazing that we've gotten to the point where now people at younger ages won't feel as alone as like what we did when we were growing up. Because like even knowing that the gay community was represented a little bit more when I was younger, I still felt very alone. I didn't feel like there was anyone in my school that was gay. No one in my family was. Like, it was just like me. I was alone. So I think now, like, I've had lots of people say, wow, I connected with your story. I searched it on Google and found you. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, there's so many things that people can find us on now. So I think it's important that we just keep being vocal. We need people writing books. We need people like doing podcasts. We need people doing videos. And we need movies and Disney movies with princes that
aren't.
I'm just like, there's so many avenues. Like, I heard that there's going to be like a gay like Disney thing, and I'm just like, perfect. I hope it's portrayed in a way that is representative of the community, but I think that we just need to keep jumping into that and being more loud and vocal about it.
It does give me a lot of hope for the future. The people who are growing up now, whether watching this video now or whenever, have a little bit more options to either learn something more about themselves or learn something about the people around us.
I mean, it's definitely something that like even some people who have like recently come out to me have asked, like, it's very easy to become cynical in the gay community because there is still a lot of hate out there being thrown towards the gays. And I feel like it's important to kind of pull back and look at the progress too, because I mean, just where I'm at now in life is completely different from when I first came out. And like, to think about all the kids that I know that are in high school coming out, and I'm just like, wow, this is awesome. But I think it's important that we put educational stuff out there for them, because I think that they're going to try stuff no matter what. So we need to educate them so that stupid things aren't done that are life-changing, and I want them to like be aware of it. And I know when I went to counseling, when I needed someone to talk to me about like accepting myself and finding self-love and going out into the world and doing like whatever I wanted to do, instead I was talked to about as if me being gay was the problem that needed to be fixed. And so the focus was fixing the gay and not helping me accept the gay so that I could go out there and be confident and go out into the world. So I think in areas like this, there's still counselors and people who need to realize that we're not canceling gay. We're not saying gay is wrong. We need to learn how to help people accept that and talk openly about it, because like I went to counseling in Lynchburg. It's Liberty Land. Everyone's Christian there. So anything that goes against the Bible was like, even in a counselor who's not supposed to put their religious opinion into their counseling will.
I spend a lot of time educating medical professionals who should know better, and I find that I am consistently more knowledgeable about trans issues, including how it affects my own body, than the medical professionals who I visit. And I think that like counselors is another area that needs to really be improved with education, whether, having teachers, having the counselors, having every professional out there being a little bit more up to date on the language that's coming out, being more sensitive to people's needs, and also just knowing more of the facts and figures.
Yeah. I mean, as something as simple as like sitting in a classroom and hearing them talk about just like cisgender couples, like it's a little bit harder because especially if that's not what you identify as, and they're talking about like, okay, when you all go out there and you ladies meet your husbands and you men meet your wives, like, why can't we just say when you guys go out and find your partners? Like, it's an easy transition to not add like cisgender titles to everything, to where someone who's not part of that community can feel like, okay, they're not attacking me. They're talking about our futures, not in a negative way. Because when I was at JMU, like, there was a gay person who got very offended that the professor was like, when you ladies meet your husbands, and she identified as a lesbian, and she was very offended that the professor did that. I don't believe that the professor meant anything.
It was definitely
by
unintentional.
like, if you're a cisgender person, like,
You don't know any
that's
better.
normal for you. So you're speaking out of the norm, and I think that's one thing the gay community also has to take into consideration, is that's their normal. And as much as we would love people to understand us, we also have to not get offended so quickly and like go up into arms and like cut their heads off because they said ladies going to meet their husbands, because that is their norm, and it's something that has to be taught. And I think it's important for gay people to be understanding to a point. There are,
It's up to a point then.
yeah, like, don't let people walk all over you. But bring it up in a way, like, if it makes you uncomfortable, bring it up in a way that's not attacking them. Because people are a lot more willing to listen if you're just like, hey, some of us ladies are going to find another lady. Like, it's okay. You have to do it in a way that you don't instantly, like, anger other people. Because we can also offend the straight people that are, like, living their normal life. Like, just like we say that the Christians shove their Bibles down our throats, gay people can also shove other things, and you don't want... I was like, oh great, this is going to be dirty.
That's not getting any better.
Us gay people can shove things down people's throats too. So yeah, we can be too extreme as well, and you have to realize that if you're going to be upset that people are shoving their lives down your throat, like, you have to also be aware when you're doing it to someone else.
I think what Drummond is saying also is think about the intent behind somebody's question. I definitely get asked all those awkward questions, but if somebody is truly well-meaning, wanting to learn, that is totally different than somebody who's being hateful, intentionally hateful, trying to spark an argument. You have to think about the intent that somebody's coming at you with.
Yeah, you can't just instantly assume that people, like I did when I was younger, instantly assume that anyone that asked a question is just like to make a mockery of the fact that you're gay or part of the LGBT. And it's definitely something I had to work on. It's not something that was easy. Like, even when I put my first video out on YouTube and it got lots of like views and stuff, I read people's comments where they were just a simple question, and I got so offended because I'm like, how dare you like ask how I know if I'm gay? Like,
But it was a legitimate question because they actually wanted to understand. Maybe they were asking for themselves, maybe asking for someone else, but it was a legitimate question coming from that.
Yeah. So when you put yourself out there, be open-minded when people have questions, because you never know where it's coming from. It's better to assume that it's coming from a good place and they want to understand, than to assume that they are coming at you because they want to throw you into a grave because you're gay. I think a lot of people, I've met a lot of people who have asked really offensive questions, and like, a lot of times it's the tone that they ask. But if it's through text, like, always try to assume the better until like you realize like, okay, this person's being an ass, and then you're just like, you know what? I don't need to help you. Like, it's my life is my life. It's not affecting you, and I don't have to explain to you who I am.
That's why I tell people to please go Google it first,
Use
and then we
Google.
can talk. It's a great resource. You should try it.
Back in the day, it was Ask Jeeves.
Oh, yeah.
I
was
literally
like
remember
that.
typing like, what is gay in Ask Jeeves, and it popped up. So I didn't know about history, and it popped up. I was on my grandmother's computer up in Northern Virginia, and I was like, what is gay? And then like, I searched a lot of other things, and that's how they found out. They never told me they found out. So when I came out, I think my family, maybe not my dad, I don't know if they ever talked to him about it. I'm assuming they did, but he reacted very negatively, but they seemed to all kind of have a grasp of it when I came out. So it was a pretty positive experience with them. But later on, they told me all the ways that they kind of found out.
I don't think anybody's quite as stealthy as a kid as they think they are. I remember when I first got on a computer, one of the first postings I ever made in a chat room was, "Is it possible to be gay without sexual experience?" I'm like 12 or 13 posting this, and I got this overwhelming flood of responses from like the moderators jumped in and they were like, "Yes, absolutely." And it was so reassuring to me, but I also did not know about browser history. And my father found this thread, and I did not see a computer again for a number of years because obviously I was doing bad stuff on the computer, like learning about myself.
Sin. Dirty. How dare you ask that question?
But it was a really legit question because I didn't know. Everything that I knew about sexuality, let alone gender identity, which was not even in the picture for me at that point, was about actual actions with people. And I was like, well, how do I know? Everyone was telling me you can't know. And indeed, I knew who I was from a very, very early age, even without the language to truly explain it. The internet's come a long way, though.
Yes, it's gotten a lot better for everybody. There's several search engines now. And there's a thing you can do, like hit private, so that your search history does not. Definitely come a long way from when internet first came out. I mean, MySpace and all that fun stuff.
There's so many more resources out there.
Exactly.
I'm glad for young people coming out with those resources, and I wish the people who are not within the community would actually take advantage of some of those resources and educate themselves just a teeny tiny bit before you ask your friendly neighborhood gay guy or trans guy all the questions that you know people ask.
Yeah, I mean, before I went and bought a car, and before I go get my car fixed, I educate myself a little bit on Google. Because one, I don't want to be screwed over. Two, I don't want to sound like an idiot when I ask these questions. And I think that would help a lot of people if they Googled some things, and then they might even be able to not ask those questions because there are unlimited resources that give you all the answers that you've probably asked someone. I know every question I've ever been asked could literally be searched. I feel like the terminology of like LGBT and all of those, I think those can be asked. I think it's important to kind of know the difference between each one. And I mean, I'm still learning. I feel like every day there's a new letter added to the alphabet here. I feel like we're gonna have to start like creating symbols because we're running out of letters. I think it's interesting that we've gotten to a point in time where people feel comfortable being themselves in whatever shape or form that is. I know that for like LGBT, like those people are the ones that kind of hear the most, like we're getting more light than some. And I think we're going to see later on in the future that more groups are going to start coming into the light, and hopefully there will start to be more roles in places. I know TV shows I've seen, like Netflix is doing it, even Disney is doing it, where the gay people are starting to have positions. Like I was really happy when Glee brought in like a transgender person, which was awesome. I mean, Orange is the New Black, I think is amazing. She's probably one of my favorites. Just because you see her struggle with the transition, you see the struggle between like her family, and then you see her struggle in prison, and it's just like you get to kind of see the struggle, and I like that because I feel like a lot of people can identify with others' struggles, and that's kind of why I put my struggles out there, because I think it's important to not show just the shiny side of the life that you live, because other people who aren't living the shiny start to think that their life is so much different. So I like to kind of share the unshiny side so that people see that I do struggle. It's not, I don't live a perfect life. I didn't come out and it was just like, the world's lifted off my shoulders, sunshine everywhere. So like on a regular basis, I'm confronted with struggles, being part of the LGBT, growing up, just living in general, being in this country, like, it's just, we've struggled, and I'm going to share it with you guys. So I love when a show is a little bit more real. That's why, as much as I love that Love, Simon is kind of out there and went like into theaters where people could actually watch it, and I was amazed by how many gay people were at the theater when I went to see it in theaters. I think it's important to kind of show the other side, because if we keep making it look so shiny, like, people are going to assume that their lives suck because they're not as shiny as what the movies make it seem.
I think we need to find a way also for straight people or cisgendered people to realize that this is part of a human experience. Like, I always tell people, everyone is transitioning at all times. You are transitioning in different careers or transitioning into different relationships. We have transitions of our own health and bodies throughout our lives. Everyone does. So that's really like a common human experience. Mine looks a little bit different, true, but it's really a very common part of just living and changing and growing, figuring out new stuff about oneself, figuring out how to navigate the world. That should be an experience that everyone can relate to.
Yeah, I feel like in general, labels should be used as a way to find people who are similar to you, and not so much used as the way people like to use them now, as categorizing people.
Or weaponizing it.
Because I think that as soon as like you hear a certain word, you automatically attach words to it that you think that this is what they are. Like, when I think Christian, first thing that comes to my mind is closed-minded. But that's not true for all of them. Like, there are a lot of people who are open. There are actually churches that are open to LGBT, and they don't treat you any differently. I've been to a lot of them, and I love those places. When people think gay, I feel like the first thing they think is sex. Like, I feel like that's why a lot of people have such a negative like thought around the LGBT community, because it's kind of talking about our sexual orientation, who we're sexually attracted to, and like sex is like taboo. So like our whole community seems to be like, no, don't talk about it. Like, when YouTube did the whole like taking away LGBT off of like the restricted, like, they're like, oh, gay, deals with sex, can't be on YouTube if it's restricted. And I'm like, whoa.
These are human issues. It's about just being a person.
Yeah, like, me being gay isn't just because I like to like have sex with guys. Like, it's a whole lifestyle as well that we talk about. Like, learning to accept yourself is not sex. Like, that's like learning to love yourself.
That's way bigger.
So to throw like a taboo thing on the whole community just because we're talking about learning to accept yourself because you are sexually attracted to this person, because this is what you sexually identify as. Like, the word sex shouldn't be something that automatically like knocks you off into the taboo land of, oh, we can't talk about this in school, can't talk about this in church. Like, I think it's really important that we look at this and realize that we are a community that's being like quieted because the word sex is part of what our community consists of.
And as a trans person, my gender identity actually has absolutely nothing to do with sex or sexual behavior. I also happen to have certain sexual preferences and interests, but those actually are in a totally separate sphere than me simply living my authentic life as a dude.
Yeah, I definitely feel like people automatically put a title on someone and just judge very quickly, and we put like everything onto it. It's just like, transgender people, this is how we categorize them, and it's very different because I've met lots of different transgender different people, and it's interesting to see like the different like paths that each one takes, because it's very different. So
it's almost like we're all different people. It's crazy.
Oh my gosh, what? That's possible? You guys don't all go to the same transition hospital and transition there? Transition camp?
That would have been fun, actually.
Have people to talk to about it. But yeah, I feel like it's important to keep building the community. I feel like I've been told by people, they're like, well, I'm okay with the fact that you're gay, I just don't want you to rub it in my face. And I'm like, okay, so I'm not being loud because I want to rub me being gay in your face. I'm being loud because I want to be louder than you talking poorly about gay people, so that gay kids understand that who they are is perfectly okay. And it is okay to love themselves and be happy. And if their family doesn't, that's okay.
Yeah, family is whoever is there for you and loves you and supports you. And sometimes that has nothing to do with blood. It has to do with the people who are actually there and take you seriously as a person.
Exactly. And that was something that, like, when I came out, I went to college and, like, I had a counselor. This was, like, the first area where, like, I kind of was, like, learning to accept who I was. And the counselor told me, she's like, your family is like your blood, but that doesn't necessarily mean that that's your only family. She's like, here in college, you've created a family. Your friends that you see every day, the ones that you eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner with, the ones you go to class with, the ones you do stuff with outside of school, that's your family too. And yes, I know the feeling, like, man, it would be really nice for, like, my dad to just accept me and be able to have a conversation and, like, love me the way other people's dads do. But on the other spectrum, it's just like, you've got people that love you and you have to focus on that. Like, don't focus on the negative, don't focus on the hurt, because it's there, it's gonna happen. If we all focused on that, we would all be sad. I promise. Like, when it comes to happiness, like, happy people, there's no one that lives a perfect life. And the people that you're looking at and you're like, wow, their life is perfect, I want their life. What you're seeing is those people are focusing on the good things happening in their lives and aiming towards that.
And working towards those things, you know, every day putting the next foot forward towards good people in my life, good things for myself, and not letting whoever is not being supportive really set the tone.
Exactly. Like, I feel like there's people out there who are, like, they look at themselves in the mirror and they just pick out all their flaws. They're like, oh, well, my facial hair is patchy. Oh, my nose, my eye. He's got more facial hair than I do, for sure. I don't think I would ever grow that much of my facial hair out. But let me try that on for a minute. It's actually not real.
It's a Velcro stick on.
I need one of those. Go out in disguise at VidCon so no one knows who I am. But you can't just pick yourself apart. You have to, like, find the positives. Like, I definitely, like, had body image issues, and still to this day people point out stuff about me that they think is not, like, perfect. I think as soon as you put yourself out there, people want to tear you down. And I feel like with my confidence, people are like, oh, he's cocky, or he thinks he's so much better than other people, when I'm just trying to be happy and live, like, I just want to try to live the best life I can. And I'm trying to do it on my own, like, playing field, and I'm trying to not tear other people down, to be happy. I believe that my happiness doesn't mean that someone else has to be unhappy.
It's not a limited resource. Like, everyone can move towards something that makes them happier.
Exactly. And I feel like in the LGBT community, it's a different type of understanding of yourself that you have to go through than the other people who are automatically accepted as normal right from when they get their first girlfriend, or like for them it's normal. Like, for a gay person, like, bringing your first boyfriend home, that's rough. Like, that's scary. So for us, we have to, like, learn how to find happiness and be okay that people are yelling at us, telling us it's not okay. You have to shut them out, and sometimes it's up here too. Like, you have to learn how to shut out your own negative thoughts, because you were raised in a cisgender world where what they're doing is what is considered normal. And I believe, like, a lot of issues that I have with myself, like, when I was first coming out, was literally because that's what is considered normal. Like, even to me now, like, gay marriage, like, in my head, it's hard to see. Like, when I think, oh, getting married, I still see, like, a white dress, the tux. And so, like, for me, I love seeing visual videos and photos of gay marriages and stuff, because I'm just like, oh my gosh, that could be me. It
normalizes it.
Exactly.
You look great in the white dress, by the way.
Thank you. Got my little black dress on now. But yeah, I think the more we keep putting ourselves out there and normalizing it, it's really important in helping people. Even someone like me who is out there trying to just normalize it, it's still, parts of it aren't normal for me, and still parts of me, like, say, oh wow, my sister's got kids. She she's not married. She didn't do the correct steps of what you're supposed to do. But it's just like everything that's different needs to be talked about, because we need to realize that there's not one way to do things. And I think the gay community, we just right from the beginning, we're different. So we have like our new paths that we have to follow.
And we're different, but that also means that we still need role models out there that show that level of diversity, that there's not one path to being gay or one path to being trans, and just slowly normalizing the narratives that are out there so that we have a variety of options to see what's true for you.
Exactly. I feel like when it comes to like role models, like it's important to find one that's like a role model to you, and realize that even if they're your role model, you don't have to be exactly like them. Your story doesn't have to line up. Like my granddad is a huge role model for me. He was straight. But like there's a lot of things about him that I consider like this is what I would like to do with myself, because being gay is a small part of who I am, and he was just a good person. So I strive to follow him in those footsteps. Then there's other LGBT content creators on YouTube that I like just idolize. I think they're amazing. I love how they put themselves out there. And granted, I was out there before a lot of them were. Some of them are younger, but I still look up to them because they have such large platforms and they're willing to be so authentic with the world. And that's scary sometimes, because your authentic self is your true self. And when people attack your true self, like,
it feels really vulnerable.
It hurts a little bit more. Like when you put on that fake mask and someone attacks that, you're just like, whatever. Like that's not who I am anyway. So when people put their real selves out there and they're ready for the world, be ready to be attacked. Like that's my warning for anyone out there putting themselves out on social media and wanting to start a YouTube channel.
It comes with the territory.
Yeah, they're coming. Grow thick skin. It's love yourself fully before you do anything like that, because
but I think it's also really freeing to have a thick skin, because then you can deal with whatever comes at you and actually be like really happy with it.
Yeah, you kind of learn to let the like petty stuff roll off your skin, and then you can actually deal with real problems. And I think for me, I'm the type of person that any problem I have to dig down and understand it. The roots of anything that goes wrong in my life, I dig down and try to understand it. So for me, like my thick skin came from a deeper understanding of everything that made me who I am. So I've never really dug down and like, oh, what made me gay? Like, I just believe I was born this way. And I don't need to dig any deeper than that. This is who I am. I've learned to love myself for that. It's more of like my other insecurities that everyone on this planet faces. It's just like, what made me that way? And I kind of dig down deep into that. And then I don't share it until I am at a point in my life where I'm not going to be hurt by people who ask questions, who are just trying to figure out why I feel that way. Because
you have to be able to answer those things for yourself first before you can even try to explain to someone else.
Yeah. There's tons of things that I've gone through in life that it took me forever. Like I just did a video about like an abusive relationship. That was almost 10 years ago for me. And it wasn't the fact that I was afraid of people attacking me. Most people don't attack people who are the victims of that. It was just more along the lines of, am I ready to answer the questions of other people in that situation?
Oh, yeah.
Because let me tell you, when I posted that video, I always open it up by saying, hey, you guys can message me on my other platforms in a private form, because YouTube comments, everyone can read them. I've got it set to where you can't respond to people until I give you permission, but I wanted to just let people know, hey, my Instagram, my fan page on Facebook is open for more serious conversation. And when I posted that video, I generally get one or two people that message me. This video brought in so many.
Oh, wow.
Like I've been given novels, and I am so glad that people feel open enough to share that with me, because like that's a hard thing to talk about.
It's really personal.
I still get like watery eyed talking about it for myself, but to hear some of the people's stories, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, I'm so glad that you can talk to me about this. But 10 years ago, I would have not been ready for that. That would have been a lot to like process. I've gotten to the point now where I would never let someone touch me that way ever. I would never let someone talk to me that way ever, or make me feel like that ever. So like now I'm at a point where I can answer those questions, and I'm just like,
And actually be a resource for other people who are still like in the midst of it.
exactly. And like I'm the type of person that I know people are going through that issue, and I want to be there for them. I know that there's some people who have gone through that and they just want to forget that happened. They don't want to talk to other people about it, and that's okay too. I definitely think you should talk to someone to help you like process that and move on so that you're going in a positive direction. But it's not your job to tell someone, and it's if you don't want to, you don't have to share your story with me either. Like it's not required. Like if you just want to ask me a question, you don't have to share your entire story with me if you're not comfortable. Like you definitely are not required to do anything like that.
But I do appreciate when people can come with questions, because I know that people are struggling, whether it's with their relationships or their identity of any sort, and having a platform that is open to share those questions or just to not feel so alone, I think is super, super valuable.
I mean, when it comes to you having your own platform, like do you get people that ask questions like
Absolutely.
that are transitioning and have questions? Because I mean, for me, like I just dealt with my sister giving birth like for the first time, and that scared me to death. Like I was literally asking everyone, like I was like, oh my gosh, she's pregnant and she's at my house, and oh my gosh, what am I supposed to do? And like surgery and all of that stuff like scares me to death. And so like I was just like asking thousands of questions, and it was nice to like have friends that were mothers who've gone through that. And I feel like surgery is scary in general. I think
I've ended up being a resource for everything that has to do with hormones, with surgery, a lot of technicalities and specific questions that I really don't mind people asking, because I feel like it either helps them in their own journey or they're truly genuinely curious. I mean, I think the body's amazing. I love, talking about the body. I think it's just such a cool thing to be able to modify, whether it's transition or anything else. So I love those kind of conversations as long as they come from a place of genuine curiosity. But yeah, I get so many questions like on my own platforms. I'm a young trans person. I look up to you and have a question, or this gives me hope. I get those kind of nice comments, and I also get people who, whether they're gay or straight, are asking questions that maybe they did not have anyone else to ask, and they see me, as a visibly trans, visibly mostly gay person, and they're like, we can ask him this burning question. But yeah, I absolutely attract those kinds of stories. My inbox is full of those stories too, and I'm glad that somebody has a place to be able to share it where they hopefully feel safe, non-judgmental, and where I can actually have a conversation with them.
Yeah. So if you have questions about transgender stuff, I can point you in the right direction, because I can't answer those. And I mean, I've had lots of people, because like my sister in high school pointed a lot of people in my direction when she found out, because she was also a big activist in high school, which was awesome. She was just there to support anyone, and she'd point a lot of people in my direction. And I came across people who had questions about that, and I was just like, let me educate myself real quick, because I'm not qualified to answer this question. And I mean, I just recently, when I was working for the health department, I did not educate myself fully on the chart of someone who came in, and they had thought that they were HIV positive because they had had sex with their partner who had HIV. They were feeling sick and everything, and physically male, would have never thought anything else. And he referred to himself as a him, and everything just kind of pointed that direction. And then after the test came back negative, and then he was just like, maybe I'm pregnant.
Like, and, what?
Like, my face definitely showed, haha, couldn't be pregnant. But I was just very confused. And I was just like, I didn't say, oh, that's a possibility, because I didn't read the chart, which definitely read the chart now. because like there's just so many things that you don't know and you don't want to offend people, especially when it's your professional career. But I was just like, oh wow, and that ended up being the case. He was pregnant. The hormones and stuff that he had been taking were ordered offline from like some agency in China that...
Don't do that.
I was just like, oh, I'm not qualified for this. I was like, this is not what I went through training for. I was like, I can understand, but this was different. I'm sexual health. That's different. So I was like, let me get a nurse in here that can talk to you about this, that's qualified. But I think a lot of times you come across stuff like that, and it does feel awkward sometimes when you are not like aware. And then I also felt embarrassed because I wasn't aware, and I am part of the LGBT community, and I know what it feels like to kind of be spoken to on a level of someone not understanding you. So I felt bad that I was not more aware of that situation.
But you'll never make that mistake again.
I will not. I learned from it, and I will share my story so other people can learn from it. But yeah, it's rough, and I think all we can do is be more understanding and try as much as we can to educate ourselves on a regular basis, because I'm constantly doing that. I'm always asking people, like, I need more books. Like, tell me, I want more LGBT books, please. I want to hear more stories. So I've been working on a book. I know there's a lot of other people that have been writing books, and I just think it's important for the LGBT community to write books that can be read by large groups of people. I'm not writing like a romance novel. I don't think that needs to be told. I think there's enough of that out there. So if you want to find it, it's out there for sure. I think there's a little bit more of a serious note that there's still very few books out there on a serious note that I think could be read and help people to understand. I know that I would like my book to kind of be read by someone like my dad, who has a gay son who doesn't really understand it and isn't really willing to listen to what I'm saying. But maybe if there was a book out there, he could like pick it up and have a black cover on it so that he doesn't flash it out for the world to see. But I think it's important. I think that a book would be helpful for parents to read. I know that there's a book like, it's like, this book is so gay. It's like a rainbow cover, and it says it in really big letters. And I got it. My friend Jasmine's borrowing it now. But that's screaming it. No parent's going to pick that up and go buy it.
Or the parents who do are the ones who are already totally cool with their kid being gay.
Yeah.
And while it's awesome that they still read that book, they don't really need it. They're not the target audience.
Yeah. And what I've learned is people who are willing to like have an open mind are going to be the ones that find the books. People who are closed-minded will find those closed-minded books that agree with their terms. So we really need to create a book that can help the closed-minded people like have a little bit more of an open mind. Because I've read some books that are very condemning to the LGBT, and it like my stomach twists when I read it. I'm just like, ugh.
It's so sad that those narratives are still out there and that a lot of people still read them and ascribe to them. Like, that hurts.
Yeah, it's like how false those books can be. I'm just like, no. They talk about like us recruiting people. Like, no.
I wish.
If there was a way to cough on someone and make them gay, you would all be gay. Because I mean, this past month I was sick, and all my coworkers would be gay. All my customers would be gay. Like, if that was the case, everyone would be gay. I promise. Well, that was definitely a lot that we talked about. So hopefully you guys got some information out of this video, and most definitely if you have any questions, I know that I am perfectly open to answering anything. I know Ezra will be able to answer anything as well. If you guys have anything for him, I will most definitely link his social media down below. So if you guys want to go find him, if you feel more comfortable talking to someone about an issue or something that just life in general, he's willing to talk to you guys about it just like I am. But hopefully I will be able to do a little bit more videos. Maybe if you guys have some questions that you want us to kind of do another video on, we can do something else later on down the road. But I hope you guys enjoyed this. Don't forget to click a thumbs up if you like the video. I definitely go off of which videos you guys like. I try to make more content around that. And make sure you subscribe to my channel. Check out his Instagram, is going to be linked below. And I will talk to you guys next week.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Yay!